From 1939 to 1945, the world was submerged in the horrors of World War II. This was a time where millions of innocent lives were taken by the Nazi regime, a political group headed by Adolf Hitler, whose goal was to eradicate minorities by killing them or by sending them to concentration camps. However, there are many groups who were disgusted by these war crimes and risked their lives for innocents to be free. One such man is Oskar Schindler. Schindler was a German businessman who initially sided with the Nazi regime, but dedicated his fortune to saving his workers after witnessing the atrocities against the Jewish community. Although not perfect, Schindler exemplified the Beatitudes through his compassion, dedication, and love. Schindler entered the Nazi regime as an opportunist. He believed that by having a factory which housed Jewish workers, he would be able to achieve riches. He traveled to Poland to set up a factory and was quickly immersed in the black market, which he used to bribe officials. While operating the factory, Schindler grew more disgusted by the egregious acts of hatred against the Jewish community, which included thousands of Jews being rounded off into a concentration camp where they were subjected to awful living conditions, torture, and ultimately death. This led Schindler to bribe officials so his workers may be safe from concentration camps. In 1942, when an order was given to send all of his Jews to Auschwitz, Schindler asked Armand Gut, a notoriously sadistic Nazi commandant, if he could relocate his factory elsewhere. He was told to create a list of workers that he would take with him, which led to the creation of a list of over 1,000 Jewish workers, popularly known as Schindler's List. At the factory, Schindler treated his workers with respect and allowed them to stay overnight so they may be spared from the cruelties of the Nazis. By the time the war ended, Schindler was near bankrupt, which led to him and his wife fleeing to Argentina to avoid persecution. Schindler died in 1976 and was buried in a Catholic cemetery on Mount Zion in Jerusalem. Unlike his contemporaries, Schindler treated his Jewish workers with decency, coinciding with the Beatitude, "Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy." When talking to his workers, he treated them humanely and called them his Schindlerjuden, which means Schindler's Jews. In his memoirs, Willy Strenner, a Jewish man who was transferred to Schindler's factory during the war, said, "He was a tall man with a friendly smile and he greeted me warmly. I was surprised that a German industrialist would talk to me not as a Jew but as a normal person." Schindler's factory was a haven for his workers. He was friendly, Jewish people were allowed to practice their religion, and there were no beatings and killings at the hands of a Nazi. Because of the mercy that Schindler showed his workers, they were saved from the Nazis, and he was recognized by Yad Vashem as a righteous Gentile. His compassion coincides with the Beatitude, "Blessed are they who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied." Initially, Schindler was supportive of the Nazi regime. However, as he witnessed their awful crimes against the minorities, his appetite for justice grew. In order to make a difference, he attempted to save his workers by bribing officials with gold, cash, furs, and jewelry, and releasing false production reports for his factory, which could have resulted in imprisonment if he was caught. After the Nazis surrendered, Schindler and his wife fled to escape persecution, even though he was an ally, leaving behind any possible wealth that he could have received from grateful Jews and from his factory. His sacrifice and risks resulted in over 1,000 Jewish workers being saved from concentration camps, who were then able to share their stories with the world. Finally, Oskar Schindler demonstrates the beatitude of "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God." Although Schindler was not a peacemaker in a traditional sense, he was an advocate for peace in a hostile time. At the time, there was a great divide between the Jewish and the Germans. The Nazis persecuted the Jews, while the Jewish community had a generalized hatred towards those who are German. Schindler's actions exhibited peace. Instead of treating them poorly, he respected them and made them feel accepted. His actions proved that not all Germans were authoritarian bigots, that even in the darkest of times, there is still a glimmer of hope. Oskar Schindler is a prime example of the Beatitudes. Although he was affiliated with the Nazis, he gave up his wealth and risked his life to save his Jewish workers. He treated his workers with decency, he demonstrated compassion, and was a peacemaker in his own way. Decades after the war ended, the world still remembers and appreciates Schindler's contribution to stopping the terrors of the Nazi regime and creating a more accepting world.